When you integrate something into ChatGPT, it's like you already have the search results there, so you can then integrate that into another part of what you're already building versus pulling it from Google.
You can start a company, but trying to grow that company, good luck.
Rather than try to do a lot of bottom of funnel influencer like programs, let's partner with some of the best influencers in our space and create original shows.
Real talk backed up with real action. This is GTM News Desk.
I'm Nick Bennett.
And I'm Mark Hillens.
Let's see what's trending.
Welcome to the GTM News Desk, everyone.
And it's a beautiful day. It's 75 degrees outside, so I wish it was still summer.
Nick is now doing the weather during the GTM News Desk. So expect that new segment in season 2. We're going to do that. And also, I'm going to ship you a new hat, Nick, because the hat you have on, it looks a little sad. I've got to get you a new tack hat.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, or next time you're in Maine, get me a new Maine hat.
What's the significance of that hat you have on?
Our first vacation with our oldest, that we took her to York, Maine, and she picked out this hat for me and was just like, you like hats, let's buy you this hat. And I said, okay. And yeah, I've always wore it the last couple of years.
Alrighty. That's a nice story. That's nice. First news story. This is not a super recent news story by any means, but it's a very important one coming from Andrew Chen about the ridiculous lower costs of starting a company. So you can start a company, Nick, now with $10. Maybe you need a little bit more, but it's really cheap. $500 or so to get an LLC. Beyond that, what do you really need, right? You need an idea for a problem, and you can start going. We've talked about the idea of minimal viable audience versus minimal viable product and how important an audience is these days. But Andrew Chen, in his article, that we will, of course, link to in the show notes and on TAC, talks about how hard it's become for companies to find the growth leverage and the growth channels they need. You can start a company, but trying to grow that company, good luck. It means you need more money. You need to be smart about the channels you use. You need to figure out word of mouth faster. You got to build a better product. So starting is easy. Actually growing it is really hard. And we're talking to someone in our third segment today, Katie from Klue, which is a competitive intelligence type product. They sell it to competitive analysts and product marketers, Nick. This idea of how can I get a competitive edge with what I'm doing? Maybe from a product standpoint, a category standpoint, a solution standpoint, but also we're going to talk a lot about from a brand, content, media network, community standpoint. I really feel like that's what's happening in this first story. Andrew's saying stuff that paid, maybe you need to do that, but to truly grow and have some type of differentiation in how you grow and a little bit of defensibility or some leverage, you need to create an owned audience, an owned community and experience for your audience to kind of opt themselves into so you can build a much stronger connection with them. Trying to just pay your way to growth these days, I just don't see how that's feasible anymore. It's just not tenable given how much competition is out there and how easy it is to start a company.
It's probably very expensive too if you're going to go down this path. So it's someone that's starting a company, do you really want to invest in dumping down money through paid before you actually have an audience that you own? This was one thing that I wish I started way earlier was building an email list. It seems so simple, but any person that's starting anything today, start building your email list, start building trust, start putting out free content that people can understand your point of view, your storytelling, why they should ultimately subscribe to you. And if you can do that successfully over the years, it's going to make night and day difference. I think it's one of the reasons why you and I have had some success. People have trusted us over the years, partly because of the companies and people that we've worked with. And obviously they've gone on to do other things, but also because of the content and the value that we've continued to put out there over the years. I'm told all the time, and I'm sure you are as well, that hey, I'm wanting to talk to you because I've seen all this content that you put out there for free. You put out a lot of amazing stuff. You give. And now it's time to ask and have that kind of come in. And I think I would much rather invest in that early and figure that out along with great product marketing fit versus just dumping money down into a paid funnel that you hope works. Especially, let's be honest, a lot of these people that start companies, like, they don't know paid inside and out. So you're going to also have to find someone that is either, consultant or like just hire someone, which is an added cost beyond that. And then you just still don't know if it's going to work.
Yeah, it's the start of the new year. So if you haven't started a way to create subscribers, which we talked to Katie about in segment 3, I know it's one of our questions we're going to ask her, so stay tuned for that. You need to do that right now, like to Nick's point. Like, start creating, and if you have one and you haven't been good at adding value to that subscriber list and nurturing it and growing it, that is what you should do right away. So that's segment 1. Focus more on the annuity type marketing and audience building exercises versus the ones that are extremely transactional, like paid search. Segment 2, Nick.
Absolutely. So let's talk about ChatGPT and the OpenAI team releasing. They have this new feature that they released a little while ago that was all about search. And it's interesting because for anyone that uses ChatGPT out there, like, and honestly, I think any of these LLM platforms out there, like, I don't think they can actually search the internet. I think that's part of the big issue here. And like Meta is working on one, and people want to rival Google. And when I think about why would someone use ChatGPT search, which I think they call it SearchGPT. Obviously, they didn't put a ton into the name. There's one reason, and there's no clutter of advertising or promoted queries pinned to the top like Google. Now, Google obviously makes a lot of money off their advertising and their search results, but OpenAI and like the ChatGPT team has no plans currently for advertising here. So it's like purely based on just the content that it can find. So yeah, I mean, you probably would get similar results in Google, but you're obviously going to have the sponsored and promoted stuff. And as someone that's trying to do, competitive intelligence, you're trying to research about competitors, trying to build out battle cards, things like that. Like, I think you could leverage this in a much better way in a non-biased view versus getting like kind of like all those sponsored queries that are at the top and, sponsored results. Just declutter it a little bit more.
Sure. If you don't want the sponsored stuff, go use this. I'd be shocked if it doesn't come. Nick, you and I tried this, though, before this episode, and, like, it's basically the exact same as Google, though.
Oh, yeah, agreed. It is the same thing, and I'm sure it's pulling from a lot of the same websites. However, any publisher can opt out of OpenAI's web crawler. So all it is, it's a web crawler, but it doesn't...
So can Google, though. You can do the same thing with Google. You can opt out.
Right, exactly, but you just don't have the bloat. I know we've talked about like website bloat, content bloat. Like, you don't have that bloat of just the extra stuff at the top that's like, I don't know, whenever I search for something in Google, I hate to see all that sponsored stuff. Like, I know I'm scrolling past it anyways. It's wasted screen for me.
But on the other side, when you look at this SearchGPT thing, you have to keep asking it to give you more results. At least Google, you'll scroll down, you'll see more and more results. You'll see, I don't know, it gives you more, at least up front, than what SearchGPT does.
True, but is it going to kill you to type like one extra word in, like please, or a couple extra words, like please give me more? Like, yeah, you could scroll, but like, I don't know, like to be able to just get everything kind of and have it in there. But then that's one thing. Like, yeah, you could Google it, but now you have all of this stuff in SearchGPT, and it's like, how can you then integrate it? I don't know, maybe you're writing a blog post or something, or putting together some type of content. I feel like you can infuse it a lot easier into an integrated part of whatever you're building versus taking it from Google and moving it over and like then just kind of restarting your search, restarting your prompts, stuff like that.
Wait, what do you mean abuse?
So like when you integrate something into ChatGPT, it's like you already have the search results there. So you can then integrate that into another part of what you're already building versus pulling it from Google and restarting a prompt. So it's like extra work. So you're going to search for it in Google. Yeah, you might get more results up front, but then you have to then take that and put it into ChatGPT, and you have to, whatever you're trying to build, I don't know, you're trying to build, like let's just say a blog piece. You're trying to like build that blog piece in addition to what you searched in Google, whereas you could just do it all on one platform.
I see what you mean. You're just talking about like the prompting workflow.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, maybe. It's interesting. I will be so keen to see how do they get people to use this thing, though. Because, again, very few people in the aggregate of the United States population are using ChatGPT.
True. It's
very few.
Absolutely. And I think it's just going to be something that just continues over time as they continue to make it better.
But how? How are they going to pull people from Google?
I think it's partly education. I think they're going to see more people using it.
So you think that, education. They're going to have to do mass media awareness. They're going to have to do commercials during the Super Bowl. They're going to, right? Like, how are they going to get to people?
Yeah, I think it's going to be word of mouth, too. It's going to be a flywheel that ultimately they're going to see more people. Like, there was 10,000 test users from a prototype of this back in July. And so I think it was in May of 2024, OpenAI was aggressively trying to poach Google employees for its own search team. So they not only poached Google employees, so they built what they think is going to be better than Google. And they've been testing this out with originally 10,000 plus users and now have built this out for everyone. And I don't know how many users are currently on, ChatGPT, but it's like, I think ultimately more and more people are just going to see the use of it. And then it just becomes part of your everyday habit. Like, you're not going to, it's just like, I don't know if anyone uses Microsoft Bing out there, but I'm sure there's people. But it's like, why would you use Bing over Google? And it's just like anything. If it integrates into your life easier, more people are just going to not go to use it because of this, but they're going to be a feature that ultimately they're going to take advantage of because they're already using it for something else.
I like competition. We're going to talk about competition and competitive analysis with Katie coming up next. So look, I'm all for the Google, ChatGPT, Bing, Elon Musk bullshit stuff. It's better for the consumer, in my opinion. I am highly skeptical about how fast it can take. Over time, I could see it potentially, right? You think about how long it took Google to create its dominant position. A long time, and they had really limited, no competition at the end of the day, kind of. It's different. It's a little bit different now, obviously. It's always different. But let's get to the third segment. And as you think about competitive and, when you check out the Compete Network and Klue, you can kind of maybe reminisce back to this conversation, this debate Nick and I just had about Google and SearchGPT. Is that what it is? SearchGPT?
SearchGPT.
Awesome name. And you can think about, hey, how would you position and market this and raise the awareness of this versus, what they're going to have to do? Like I said, going back to story number one, they have to spend an F-ton amount of money to get this out, I think.
Could be.
It's funny. But anyway,
we'll see in another
on
year.
This segment, go ahead, Nick, go ahead.
I was going to say, we'll see in another year.
Well, so you want to make a bet?
Well, I don't know if we'll ever know how many people are actually using it.
They publish
I don't
those
think
stats.
it will overtake Google.
Oh, interesting. You don't. Okay. All right. I will make a bet with you. We'll talk about that offline, and then we'll bring it back to the show, maybe the next episode. All right, folks. Segment number 3 is coming up right now. Segment number 3 for today's show. Another great one. Katie, what's going on? How are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
We're good. We're very good.
Did you know we also ran our very first user conference this week in person in Vancouver? So yeah, our company just ran our very first 100+ person conference in Vancouver this week. So if I'm slow to respond to anything, it's because I have 2 brain cells left.
Well, congratulations. I bet that was a big success. What was the biggest learning from it?
We're going into the event trying to really think about the priority of it being connections, not a seamless, perfect agenda of content. And so from the very outset in our opening MC notes, we set this sort of tone of the event, which was, look, we're going to have AV mistakes. We're going to have all the normal stuff you're going to have happen at an event, especially because this is our first one. But if there's one thing that we want everyone to focus on, it's connecting with each other. It's we really set the tone early on about this isn't a high stakes thing. There are going to be problems, but let's focus on what matters. And that's a community and connecting with each other and walking away with 5 or 10 people. You can ping next week when you need help with your job. That's the goal. And I think it just set the tone really nicely. And it carried through the whole day. It was very casual. It was super intimate. I would say don't go with a hotel venue. Try to find a venue that's going to facilitate it feeling intimate and real. Anyways. Yeah, that worked well.
Well, yeah, genuine. There's this like
Genuine, yes, like authentic. It was like super authentic. We
I hate the
didn't
word
go
authentic, Katie. Nick
You
knows
hate
it.
it?
I hate
Yeah,
the word
well,
authentic.
we-
Yeah.
We've had this debate before where he doesn't think authentic equals genuine.
Pardon? What does authentic mean then?
Oh, we if we have time again, we can go down the rabbit hole.
We don't have an hour?
We've had episodes on this, but yes. Anyway, I'm so glad you did that event. And actually, I bet this event is going to tie into what we're talking about today, because you folks at Klue, you run all of marketing at Klue, correct?
Yep, that's great.
Love that. Check out Klue if you haven't. Amazing company. If you're in product marketing, you got to check out Klue. But even if you're like a VP of sales, a CEO, like CRO, like you got to check Klue out. You'll see why when you go to their website. Today's conversation, though, is tied into the event Katie was talking about, because Klue, specifically Katie and her team, have created this amazing experience called the Compete Network. And we're going to dive deep into this today because Nick and I, as you folks know, who've listened to many shows, talk a lot about people first go to market and the importance of having a content-led growth motion, an event-led growth motion, a member-led growth motion, something that's fueled through your community-led growth efforts. And I truly think Compete Network, but Klue overall as a business, is doing one of the best, if not best job, Katie, at this whole thing.
Wow. Well, I'm excited to get into it and talk about sort of why we started building the Compete Network, what sort of problem we are solving it, and the inside sort of scoop on how it's perceived within the company, how we think it drives value to the business, that sort of thing. So let's do it.
Yes. So Nick, why don't you go to the first question and we can start going deep into all this.
So again, huge fan of the Compete Network. It's something, in Mark and I, we're building out our 2025 plans, and we are using the Compete Network as kind of an inspiration of like what we want to build as well. But can you walk us through the initial vision for the Compete Network? Why was it necessary for the market, and kind of what you learned early on?
The original idea, it's so interesting. I think that you both have done a really good job of putting like names and a point of view around like what owned media is, or what people first means, like all this sort of stuff. At the time, I'll talk about what the problem was that we saw and how we tried to solve it, but I had no name. I didn't know what it was that we were doing. What I knew was a challenge for us was we sell to both competitive analysts and product marketers. And from when I started at Klue about 7 years ago, the product marketing space was like really exploding. So a lot of different communities were popping up, a lot of different creators and subject matter experts were popping up in the field. And this was also happening at the same time where, if you'll remember, like kind of your vendor account on social, like the impact and the reach of like the corporate account was going down. And so you were having the people and the voices of experts in the market really gaining traction. And we were looking at our Klue account and being like, it just feels like people, they don't want to follow a company. They want to follow people, right? And we were trying to think about how do we navigate this? And what is the role that a vendor plays in the future when it comes to content or education and media? And what I noticed was a problem for our audience. So stepping outside of ourselves even, the problem for our audience was becoming this challenge of they're looking to learn how to do their jobs better. So how to do better competitive intelligence work or product marketing work. And the way that they would do that was they would have to be on LinkedIn, like all the time, tracking all of these different creators or trying to find out what's the new and latest podcast, of which there were like 20 in the space and 5 different newsletters and different communities putting on events. And it just felt like it was a full-time job for our own audience to just keep up with the content that they wanted to consume. So the original concept for what we wanted to build was to solve that problem for our audience, which was they want to be educated, they want this content. And for us, like we wanted to think about what does next gen sort of vendor approach look like in this content world. And it surely can't be just us creating like Klue content. There's an opportunity here to like bring everyone together and for the value of what we do to be the curation of all of that content into one place. And so the original concept of the Compete Network was to bring all of the best podcasts, newsletters, events, shows, courses. We're going to bring it all into one place. And it's going to benefit every creator that we're working with, because not only are we going to bring our own audience of, like a lot of people that were part of our own email subscriber list, that sort of thing. But you're going to get this network effects of everyone cross-promoting each other by driving them to the same space. So for example, we were helping to produce 5 maybe different podcasts at the early outset of the Compete Network. Some were being produced by creators, some were like original show concepts of ours, but in each of them, we would cross-promote other shows on the network. So the benefit of being a podcast creator was that by joining our network, not only would your show be cross-promoted on all of our other shows, but like the same, we would be able to cross-promote within your show as well. So there became like this, let's do it for the community, to the benefit of all creators. And the approach we also took was very much like, we're not trying to monetize your content. That's not the game that we're in, but we are trying to be the best place that our audience can go to access all of the best content, like in our category.
I love that. Funny enough, I tried to do that with our original TAC network as well. It was like a curation of all of the best marketing podcasts, sales podcasts that were related to people first. And it just didn't work the way that we wanted it to. And it wasn't more, it was partly like, we were trying to get monetization for the creators and kind of build it for the creators. But they didn't want to give us sometimes their newest content because, again, we were a distribution channel for them. They were still putting it in a lot of other places. But I love the way that you kind of built it because that was my original mindset as well. And we ultimately pivoted off of it. But I think that's brilliant for sure.
And that was very much like our starting point. And I had a pitch deck and I literally pitched like 20 different creators in our space this concept to get their sort of buy-in and to make sure there was also an understanding of, I fully believe in the autonomy of a creator owning their content. So if you don't want it on our site, you pull that off. Like we don't own anything except for original shows that we produce. So we now produce shows in 2 different ways. One is a creator comes in and they've already been producing a podcast or a show and they want some production support, and we figure out what that looks like and how that works like for us. And then the other is we come up with original show concepts ourselves. So, and then those are like co-owned. So the ones that we've done like that, the original production is we started a show called Ready for Launch this year, and it features Jason Oakley, Tamar Krominski, Andy McCotter-Bicknell, and they sort of share their different launches, their favorite launches, and they pitch for what they think is the best. And it's a competition who like had the best launch to share for an episode. It's a podcast and video show episode. And we conceptualized that, worked on the idea together, and then we co-produce it, or we produce it, but it's like an original show that we both own as well. So there's, from our original concept, which was very much curation of existing content, we've sort of morphed and grown to be looking more at our own original show production now. And it's a way that we work with influencers in the space. So you've probably seen tons of interesting work this year, B2B marketers all looking at how do we work with influencers? What are the right approaches to do that? I'm sure you have lots of hot takes on this. And our theory walking into this year was, rather than try to do a lot of bottom of funnel influencer programs, let's partner with some of the best influencers in our space and create original shows. And through the brand association of Compete Network, like Klue original shows being produced with these influencers, that's been our approach to influencer marketing this year, which is, right or wrong, it's been like an interesting and fun one to produce and learn from.
I love that. And Mark, before I let you get to that, the next question, I would love, so I have a book coming out in December that's all about influencer marketing for B2B and how brands should partner with creators. I'd love to send you a copy as well. But I'm just curious, before Mark kind of gets into the next question, is how big is the team that works on this from production? I'm just curious just to see how much goes into it.
So our content team up until 3 months ago is really a 2-person team. So we have a head of content Community, and then our social sort of video producer. So it was 2. Now we have another content marketer who does a lot of our written form content. So a team of 3, and then someone who also works on Community as well, which is kind of separate and overlaps with some of this work. But the content team really now is 3 people. And then we work with a number of different contractors. So we have 2 different video contractors that do a lot of the editing for both our own video production that we do a lot of, and they do all the editing of podcast clips and stuff as well. And then we're kind of spoiled. We have a really great brand team, And like, so we build brands and develop brands for different shows that we produce. And our brand team does like a really killer job of helping develop the sort of brand identity of all the shows that we produce, just like real products that we're bringing to market is how we try to think of it.
I love that. I mean, that's how you win with content-led growth, because you're doing content-led growth in a big, big way, and you're treating each asset, and they're definitely cornerstone, right? They're like very important assets as a product, and you're thinking about messaging and positioning for each of those different, content assets, and who exactly are they, trying to acquire from an audience standpoint, which is the next question I want to get into. You have this idea of like subscribers. You could subscribe to the Compete Network, but then you could also become a member of the Compete Network and become part of the community. Mm-hmm. Walk us through that whole thing. Like the subscriber to us in the people first model is more top of funnel, right? Yep. And then as you get a little bit deeper, you hopefully get these members who can start to then give you a lot more first party information, and you can start to kind of personalize some of the benefits and features to them. How does it work with the Compete Network?
Yes, like super similar thinking. Is we look at building an owned audience as really the top of funnel growth metric that we're trying to drive at all times. We actually look at it in a couple of ways. So we have a subscriber. You can subscribe to Compete Network. What do you get from that? You get like featured stories, and then you also get like updates on the most recent new content added to the site from across various podcasts, etc. So yes, our top of funnel number is like an owned audience number that is comprised of our subscribers. And then also we track a couple of key people at Klue and actually their audience growth as well. And then we track also like other views and reach that come from our videos on social. So we have this sort of like 3 metric owned audience number that we look at that tells us like at the top of the funnel, how many people are we influencing and bringing in that are saying, I'd like to hear more from you. And I consider someone following like one of our executives on LinkedIn as an audience that we now have the ability to get in front of, or the same for like our newsletter, people who subscribe to that. And then to move them through the funnel, the next step would be, how do we move them from being someone who's like listening to a show, watching a video series, to being someone that wants to join the community and get a level deeper with talking to other peers in our space and in our community that we're reaching out to. So that's where that next step becomes become a community member. And what comes with that is access to like one-to-one networking, is access to different events that are really specific for our community members and the professional practice that we're talking about. And then through that, to your point, it's like then you're starting to find, what do we know about these people so that we can try to make sure we're serving up the right product benefits to the work that they're trying to do. So that actually getting to Klue is, 2-3 steps down that process. It really starts at like, how do we own the hearts and the minds of the people who we're trying to influence at the top of the funnel?
Brilliant. Question on this though, because we did something very similar with HubSpot Academy to some degree, and definitely Drift Insider. How is your sales team getting involved either at the subscriber level with those people that are subscribing, or at the people, or at the level where people are becoming members? How do you treat that from a sales standpoint?
And you're asking that because you're like, how are you basically converting that into customers. And revenue? Like customers. So it's a really good question. And I probably have like a somewhat bad answer, but there's 2 things that I think about. The first is my actual belief is that the metric that we move through a lot of this work is our competitive win rate. I believe that the reason that we have a super high competitive win rate is because when people come into our funnel, they have already like mentally, emotionally chosen who they want to work with. So that's like a metric where I think it shows up.
Interesting.
Yeah. How well do we activate? We try to keep a little bit of a line between our like community members and our sales process. So we'll run different types of events or different types of content. Every quarter we run something called Klue Quarterly. This is like a really Klue type event. We talk about product. We talk about what's happening with product. We talk about updates. And so we'll promote that to our community members. And anyone that then like signs up or comes to Klue Quarterly, I consider someone in the world of saying, hey, I think I need a solution. Those are really high intent people for us to make sure we're following up with from a sales perspective to see if they're ready to buy. But someone who's like just in the community doesn't necessarily mean that they're like ready to buy. So we would look at other like scoring signals essentially that would trigger them to get followed up with by a salesperson. But it's not like you join the community and all of a sudden you're a target,
Before Nick asks the last question in this segment, and we're going to go really deep with Katie, by the way, in the exclusive content, I'm going to ask questions around content strategy, brand decisions. So lots to unpack in the exclusive stuff. But I wanted to ask you, Katie, before, again, Nick asks the final question, just around this approach of sales, the sales team and the CS team at Klue using the Compete Network. So instead of you going this way, Compete Network to sales, go the other way. How does that work, or how is it working?
So that is like totally baked into our process. If you sign up with Klue, a part of our onboarding process is literally walking you through the Compete Network, the content, how to become a member. Like every single customer should be shared. They should know about the Compete Network. And because it's mentioned so often in deal cycles as like a reason why we win, our content is always mentioned as like why Klue was chosen in an evaluation. Our salespeople are really proactive during part of the evaluation process saying, hey, if you want to stay up to date with what else we've got going on, check out this Compete Network. Like, I know that you're evaluating Klue over here, but at the same time wanted to make sure that you're seeing like the full value of what you get working with Klue. We just become like really great fuel, to be honest, that all of our salespeople use.
I love it. I love it. One pro tip for you, if you haven't done this, we took it to this level at HubSpot where we did specific ongoing enablement sessions for different revenue teams on how to best use the overall network and experience, but different assets in it to move different numbers in the sales process, like how to get to a first meeting, how to accelerate deals, how to bet with onboarding. So if you ever want to talk about that, I'm happy to give you some ideas.
So you'll also love this. I love that idea, and I think we can incorporate it. One of the things that we've done really intentionally is when we're looking at show creation or different shows assets that we want to create, it's super connected to our go-to-market priorities. So when we're talking as an entire go-to-market org and saying things like, oh, we really need to engage the executive level more effectively, like specifically this exec type, we build our show programming in like direct connection to who we're trying to engage. How much easier does it become for us to engage a CMO if we've created like recent shows, events, or assets that are like purpose-built for that audience? Now, all of a sudden, we can get in front of them, own their hearts and minds. And then also our sales and revenue teams have really great assets and shows to be sharing. So I love the idea of better enabling. I think we could probably do that. And I even think it starts with like everything you're creating from a media perspective should be done in complete service to your go-to-market priorities.
So well said. Sorry, Nick, I completely have stolen all the thunder. I'll let you ask the last question before we get to the exclusive content.
Yeah, this is going to be a selfish question for me, because going through your community page, and this is something that I'm taking ownership of, kind of like a product manager. Like, we're completely revamping our community experience and like what that looks like. And I love that your community page has people, like real people. You don't see this very often. Like there's pictures of people, there's testimonials, there's logos. Like it's really, really well done. You have your community ambassadors. Like, again, these are the people that help fuel the community. Now, as you're building this and as you kind of grow the community, how do you overcome the challenges of maintaining engagement and continuing to deliver value to members? Because that's a question that I've been asking myself for a while. So I'm curious on your thoughts here.
It's an interesting question and something that I think we're still thinking about for 2025. We're literally like doing an audit of our community right now to understand what sort of value are they looking for versus what we're delivering. Because to the exact same point of you are calling yourself a product manager, like our community is a product and it needs to deliver value and it needs to solve problems for our community members. Otherwise, like, it's not like serving us in any way. So what we've done and what has worked for us in the past is we commonly are testing different, it's like very much product management. We are testing and experimenting with different event types or with different community engagement. It could be, we're going to do a coffee meetup on a certain day. Let's try that. For a few times this quarter. Let's try an AMA format for a few times this quarter. Let's try. And so we've like literally done so many different experiments all the time, testing what are the different ideas of how we can bring the community together in a way that works for them, and then get feedback, just like your quick NPS score after the fact. So it's always connected to getting feedback. Every single thing we do, we're always getting feedback on. And what we're trying to build and have now is programs that are always on. Life becomes so much easier when you have landed on what works and we are not reinventing the wheel every quarter. We have our programs that work consistently, And then we have a couple of things we might test on a quarterly basis. So that's what we've built out now is 2 different types of event programming that we do within quarter. One is customer only sort of mentorship events. One is, again, just like an open community event. We have like 2 to 3 different things that we do every quarter that are always on. So very light for us to be able to execute because we're not building from scratch. And then we're testing sort of new ideas. And this year, like a lot of the stuff and probably into next year that we'll be testing will be around how do we build better in-person connections? Like how do we take people offline and do the things that are harder to do, but also help to build like a better community moat or help deliver more value to the people that attend.
Love that.
Great stuff. That's it for the podcast content. We're going to go, like I said, a lot deeper in the content, branding side of things, and even distribution. So head over to TAC and you can check out that exclusive content. Thank you, Katie.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of GTM News Desk presented by TAC Insider. To dive into the exclusive content with our guest today, head to the link in the show notes to subscribe to TAC Insider. Until next time, I'm Mark Killens.
And I'm Nick Bennett. Keep it people first, everybody.